Who's still panicking about climate catastrophe? The Davos crowd? European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen didn't mention the climate even once in her 2026 annual address, unlike in the past. U.S. voters? Americans rank climate change at number 28 of 30 problems, and according to the Searchlight Institute, voters in battleground states are prioritizing pocketbook issues over climate. Canada? Prime Minister Mark Carney once championed radical climate policies, but now wants to increase oil production. The Europeans? After worrying intensely about climate change for years, they have other things to worry about: sky-high energy prices, low growth, and the war in Ukraine. In the latest ranking, climate hit a new decade low. How about global warming poster child Greta Thunberg? She's moved on to other causes. Certainly not people in poor countries. They're primarily concerned about the necessities of life. According to a recent survey of Africans, climate ranks near the bottom of their priorities at number 31 of 34. That's behind unemployment, the economy, health, education, poverty, roads, electricity, hunger, corruption, and 21 other issues. Even media outlets that once peddled climate alarm have backed off. According to a Washington Post analysis, 2025 saw the fewest media mentions of climate change in 3 years. What led to this global change of mind? How could so many people be so worried just a few years ago and care so much less now? First, everyone has started to realize that there are many other challenges in the world. After the end of the Cold War, people claimed that climate change was the last big challenge to fix. There was a common idea at Davos and among many global leaders. Now, everyone recognizes that climate change is just one of many issues. Wars, budget deficits, immigration pressures, declining educational achievements, artificial intelligence, and demographic changes are just a few. Second, you can only cry wolf so many times. How many "the end is nigh" predictions have we heard over the last 50 years? One peer-reviewed study counted at least 78 specific claims, like when King Charles insisted that the world only had 18 months left to fix climate change. That was in 2019, so that statement was wrong. And every statement by every well-known climate alarmist that has been resolved by 2026 turned out to be wrong, not to mention when Al Gore told us in 2008 that we had only 10 years left. Third, climate policies are incredibly expensive and do little. The world has spent more than $16 trillion to curb climate change, and governments are looking to spend hundreds of trillions more in the future. A science study of 1,500 climate policies in 41 countries across the last 2 decades showed that only 4% worked. In total, they cut less than 0.25% of total emissions. If a private company had this kind of record, they'd be out of business. Fourth, the alarmist claims are often blatantly misleading. When you're told that sea level rise could force 187 million people to move, that claim unrealistically assumes nobody will do anything to address the problem for a century. But when people adapt, for instance, by building levees, that number goes down 99.8%. We're constantly told more people will die from heat waves, but nobody ever reveals that the cold kills many more. Right now, warming temperatures actually save lives. And of course, when there's cheap and reliable power, more people can afford air conditioning. As the US warmed in the 20th century, heat deaths declined significantly exactly for that reason. Climate economists have consistently shown that by the end of the century, climate change will cost 2 to 3% of global GDP. It's a real problem, but nowhere near Armageddon. In fact, as the UN expects the average person in 2100 to be 450% as rich as today, climate change simply means it's going to feel more like we're only 435% as rich. That's still a much better world, just not quite as good as it could have been. We still need to fix climate change, but we can do so smarter. Don't pour trillions into policies that don't move the needle, but billions into green energy R&D. This will help develop cheap green energy alternatives that can eventually outcompete fossil fuels on price. Ending the climate panic means our kids won't be needlessly scared, and neither will we. Being frightened without reason doesn't lead to smart policies. Rather, we can start focusing more on the many other pressing problems we need to fix now. Putting the climate panic behind us makes that possible. I'm Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus, visiting fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, and author of False Alarm.